What's up, people? Welcome or welcome back to Invest with T-Claus. My name is Tevi, and this channel is dedicated to my investment journey, along with coverage on crypto, Tesla, Neo, Virgin Galactic, and ChargePoint. Come for the information and stay for the perspective. So I had meant to post this video on Sunday, but had some urgent family matters to attend to. But anyways, back now, so let's talk about crypto and why the next bull run is closer than people may realize. If you've been following me on Twitter, you've likely seen me post some of these breadcrumbs I'll be talking about today. That said, I wanted to pull it all together with additional information into one somewhat cohesive video to make my point. I'll be going over a short clip from US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who has recently made a 180 on the value proposition of Bitcoin and all things crypto. I'll also cover a few articles that I feel support my views. And of course, you'll get my own perspective along the way and how I'm positioning myself in light of all this. As always, this is not to be taken as financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. This is my personal approach to investing and the thought process behind it. That said, I'd recommend watching all the way through so that you don't miss out on any pertinent information I'll be sharing. Drop the video an early like if you haven't already, and hit that subscribe button. Those are two easy ways to show your support to the channel and help it grow if you appreciate the content. All right, let's get into it. All right, so if you haven't been following the crypto space or simply aren't familiar with Janet Yellen's previous stance, during her time as the Federal Reserve chairwoman in 2017-2018 timeframe, she had initially come out and stated, referring to Bitcoin, and I quote, "I will just say outright, I am not a fan," end of quote. Fast forward to her confirmation hearing in 2021 as US Treasury Secretary, she was quoted saying, "Cryptocurrencies are of particular concern. I think many are used, at least in transaction sense, mainly for illicit financing, and I think we really need to examine ways in which we can curtail their use and make sure that anti-money laundering doesn't occur through those channels," end of quote. Now, fast forward to 2022, and in a recent interviews with CNBC, here's what she had to say. Take a listen.
Russia just said that they would accept Bitcoin as a payment for their energy resources. What does that say to you about where we are in the crypto conversation?
Well, crypto is obviously grown by leaps and bounds, and it's now playing a significant role, not really so much in transactions,
right,
but in investment decisions of lots of Americans. And the president just issued a couple of weeks ago an executive order tasking us and other agencies with thinking about the regulation of crypto.
I mean, you're less skeptical about it?
I have a little bit of skepticism because there are, I think, valid concerns around it. Some have to do with financial stability, consumer investor protection, use for illicit transactions and other things.
Right.
On the other hand, there are benefits from crypto, and we recognize that innovation in the payment system can be a healthy thing. We would like to come out eventually with recommendations that will create a regulatory environment in which healthy innovation.
So some skepticism still, but her view has evolved leaps and bounds from not being a fan of crypto to now seeing the benefit of wanting to find productive ways to allow for meaningful innovation in revamping the current financial system. What many in the political scene, including Janet Yellen, are coming to realize is that Bitcoin and crypto, generally speaking, are actually quite transparent, being that they are open ledger systems with immutable data and traceability to every single transaction recorded. As unfortunate as the war between Ukraine and Russia is, it has actually forced the likes of Janet Yellen to take a much closer look to Bitcoin and crypto, and in turn has dispelled quite a few misconceptions. It was just a week ago that Janet Yellen in testimony addressed the transparency aspect of crypto and that it really wasn't the right vehicle for circumventing sanctions and the incumbent financial system. In fact, crypto exchanges have been playing a key role in tracking the flow of money, and crypto networks have played an instrumental role in humanitarian efforts to people who were forced to flee. So between the executive order by Joe Biden and many US government officials doing a 180 over the course of the last year, that is just one of the many reasons Bitcoin and crypto is gaining traction. Now, it's important to note the difference between network adoption and price appreciation of each one of these crypto assets, right? If I asked you which part of the world is seeing the most transactional usage for Bitcoin and crypto in general, You could be tempted to say the US, since it feels like every other week MicroStrategy Michael Saylor is buying millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, and as of his most recent purchase, is now holding just shy of $4 billion worth of Bitcoin. Or maybe you could be tempted to say the European Union, right? With headlines like this here, and the fact that they have more advanced regulation and a more clearly defined framework to allow institutional investors to allocate to Bitcoin and crypto. The reality is that since the pandemic has started, the part of the world that has embraced crypto with the quickest adoption rate is the African continent, according to data pulled by analytical firm Chain Analysis. Following closely behind Africa is Central and Southern Asia, as well as Latin America. And as you can see, North America and the European Union are actually at the bottom of the list. Unless you're searching for this information, it's just not publicized, right? So Bitcoin's relevance and influence is growing as the apex cryptocurrency network, not just in Africa, but around the world. And so to try to catch up, Ethereum, Cardano, Stellar, Celo have been putting in overtime investing in different verticals across the African continent. Most recently, Charles Hoskinson traveled across the entire continent, meeting with government leaders to promote the benefits of cryptocurrency, blockchain, and specifically what Cardano could do to upgrade their financial, educational, and healthcare infrastructure, just to name a few sectors. And if you're wondering, which I'm sure some of you are, the main reason there is such a focus on Africa is because, unlike the US and Europe, the vast majority of citizens there are unbanked, and therefore have no allegiance to the traditional financial system. Africa is the second most populated continent in the world, with around 1.34 billion people. That's 17% of the world population. So if you're looking to meaningfully shift the adoption needle, that's where you go. So adoption is rising. Let's tie that back to price appreciation, because naturally the next few set of questions could be, why should I care how many people in Africa or other places in the world like El Salvador are adopting Bitcoin? Or why should I care how many people are being onboarded into Web3 / the DeFi economy? Especially since the price of each of these cryptocurrencies has been overall trending down as of late. Well, as I said last year, El Salvador accepting Bitcoin as legal tender has started a chain reaction. It has essentially forced every major corporation in the world that was doing business in El Salvador to figure out how to accept crypto and hold it on its balance sheet, right? And if they had to do that, then every bank that services those corporations also had to, so to speak, get with the program. Well, that's precisely why you're now seeing people like Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase seemingly doing a full 180 on his stance on crypto. After calling crypto and Bitcoin basically worthless in 2020, he was recently quoted saying, "Decentralized finance and blockchain technology are real new technologies that can be deployed in both public and private fashion, permissioned or not." And he adds, "JP Morgan is at the forefront of it." End of quote. Now here's where it gets interesting. JP Morgan Chase has actually been using blockchain for transacting and selling bank-to-bank transactions within their internal network since 2017. Let that sink in. And while you're doing that, let's talk about PwC. In a recent report that they released, it shows that 80% of central banks around the world have already released or are considering releasing a CBDC, or central bank digital currency, just like Jamaica and Nigeria, which Nigeria is in Africa, for those of you who don't know. Whether you realize it or not, we are in this massive transitional period where the global financial system infrastructure is being upgraded. The main benefit of TradFi, or traditional finance, integrating with DeFi, decentralized finance, via blockchain / crypto, is transaction and settlement speed. We're talking about minutes versus days with the existing Swift global system, right? That's huge. Now, the most interesting part of that report, and I quote, "Countries are at different level of maturity with CBDCs, and each country has different motivating factors. Increasing financial inclusion, facilitating cross-border payments, and controlling financial crime are all factors that come into play. We expect CBDC research, testing, and implementation will intensify in 2022, and it is impossible for any fund or institution to be active in crypto without using stable coins." End of quote. So now let's bring it back full circle. If you dig, it quickly becomes apparent that large financial institutions, government around the world, have largely been moving increasingly faster towards having a crypto regulatory framework. The reason the EU and the US have only just recently turned positive on the sector and are accelerating their efforts to establish a regulatory framework is because adoption around the globe is reaching a tipping point. Also, from a logistical standpoint, it does take time, right, to upgrade the underpinning of the infrastructure, which has been around for several decades. And realistically, it really wouldn't have made sense to do so until blockchain technology had sufficiently matured and proven itself. So I personally believe that we are here now. The Bitcoin Lightning Network is expanding and being adopted and integrated at neck-breaking speed. Bitcoin itself is being purchased and used as a reserve currency for backing multiple stablecoins, which, as stated earlier, are a must to participate in DeFi for large funds and institutions. Take that a step further, Ethereum is upgrading its consensus mechanism from proof of work to proof of stake, which is more environmentally friendly, which of course hits well with large corporations with an ESG agenda. And that transition is going into effect in late Q2, early Q3. Beyond that, the SEC has just recently approved another Bitcoin futures ETF, making this the fourth one approved in the US. As a reminder, a futures ETF allows people to invest by speculating on a future price of Bitcoin without directly buying Bitcoin itself. Now, a spot ETF is basically what everybody wants, gives direct exposure to Bitcoin. The SEC has yet to approve any spot ETF to date, and the main reason they've given so far for every rejection to date is that each application was under the 1933's Act, which, as they said, and I quote, does not provide important investor protection rules regarding valuation, liquidity, and custody of fund assets, end of quote. Every futures ETF until this last one was approved under the 1940's Act, which the SEC claims offered all those protections. The bottom line and the main takeaway here is that there's no longer any reasonable reason for the SEC to deny a spot Bitcoin ETF now that the 1933's Act was found to have sufficient said protection for futures ETF. So it should translate over to spot ETFs as well. Now, for my final point, Grayscale, which is backed by BNY Mellon, one of the oldest, most prestigious banks in the US, filed for its Bitcoin ETF last year, and the SEC owes them an answer by late summer, early fall. Again, that's end of Q2, early Q3, right? So when I put it all together and a bunch of other information that frankly wouldn't fit in this 13-minute-ish video that I'm putting together, I'm pretty confident that we'll see a spot Bitcoin ETF in the second half of this year and potentially a spot Ethereum ETF as well. And when that happens, the amount of capital that will flow into Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the rest of the crypto space, generally speaking, will be beyond what we've seen to date, driving the asset class to new highs. And it's ultimately for that reason that I'm now personally prioritizing and allocated as much as I can to my crypto portfolio while we're still in this bear market, and everyone is super focused on rate hikes from the Feds, inflation data, COVID, and the various near-term headwinds that I've talked about endlessly on this channel. Now, of course, I could be off by a few months, give or take, but I do believe that it's all coming together before this time next year. And I, for one, can't wait to see if I've been reading these tea leaves correctly. And on that note, I'll leave it here for today. Don't forget to drop this video a like if it helped you gain a new perspective, and share with others who you think could also benefit from it. For my newcomers, subscribe and don't forget to ring the notification bell so that you too can stay in the know. I'll be back on Sunday and as time allows during the week here and there. Thank you for watching. Stay humble, hustle hard, and I'll see you in the next one.